of information oh, sorry. It's really a process that's used to gather information and inform, recommendations for employers. It is flexible in design, so it can be customized to the situation, right? So to the sector, the workplace, the employer's goals, the employees that the employer has, as well as timelines. And this is something we will talk a lot about when it comes time to kind of getting into the nitty gritty of how to do an organizational needs assessment. It's actually, one of the things that makes organizational needs assessments possible to execute. They're not always exactly the same each and every time, because they're meant to really relate to the context in which they're taking place. And that works to the advantage of those who are conducting the ONAs, and definitely ends up resulting in, the most efficient process and the best product for the employer. What an organizational needs assessment is not is individualized literacy assessments, or an exercise where you're gathering and reporting on the skills levels of individual employees. So it might involve assessment, but that is not what an organizational needs assessment is. So the timelines, the activities and timelines last year, you will notice, they were short. They were very short. In 5 short months, MTML is quite pleased with what they were able to accomplish. 3 ONAs were conducted, a toolkit was developed, and all this because of, I would say, because of support from LBS practitioners and their willingness to kind of, jump right in at a time when there was quite a lot of uncertainty. The way the work was approached was that the first month focused on, project initiation. Okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to do it? How can we get this done in 5 short months? December was the opportunity for us to develop, to draft the ONA toolkit, and I'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. In January, MTML delivered training to LBS providers on how to conduct ONAs. In February, the ONAs were conducted. And you'll see a few logos here. The ONAs were conducted by Dixon Hall, MTML conducted an ONA, and PTP also conducted an ONA. March was the opportunity to kind of bring it all together, reflect on the learnings, and to refine that ONA toolkit that was drafted back in December 2022, based on the findings, based on the experience of actually conducting ONAs last year. The 3 pilot ONAs that were conducted were all conducted with small to medium-sized enterprises. So, there are employers that were as few as 6 employees and employers that were as many as 150, but still within that small to medium-sized enterprises kind of definition. MTML conducted an ONA, and this was actually, really, that was not the original plan, but it ended up really helping inform our learning about the experience that LBS providers might have in conducting ONAs. So it ended up, being a good thing, we think. The other 2 ONAs were conducted by, as I said, Dixon Hall and PTP, both of which are organizations that are LBS providers, but also provide employment services. The 3 employers that were involved in the ONAs, or who were the subject of the ONAs, were a baked goods manufacturer that also has retail operations, an arts-oriented not-for-profit, and a restaurant chain. So quite different, which again, we think was actually that was ideal. That was that's what we wanted, but we didn't necessarily have control over that, but it was helpful to have that difference as we reflected on the experience, what we learned, and what we could apply to the future. Now, the ONA process and tools. The way we think of the ONA process is that it has three stages. There's the information gathering stage, the analysis stage, and the reporting stage. That is what the ONA itself is. Those are the stages of the ONA. But of course, you can't conduct an ONA unless you have an employer, which is, that's why before those three stages, we identified that employer engagement is a necessary step before you can start an ONA. That's broadly speaking what, all the process for an ONA. What MTML did last year was developed resources to support each of these stages. So for employer engagement, MTML developed an information sheet that could be shared with employers that help them understand what an ONA is and what their role would be, as well as the benefits for the organization in engaging in this process and potentially having, a workplace literacy program or referral to LBS providers as an outcome. And that information sheet was developed by MTML for use in finding an employer for them to do an ONA with, as well as shared with other other LBS programs who were doing ONAs. To elaborate the three stages of ONAs, MTML developed a toolkit, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Actually, right now, I'm going to talk about that. So the ONA toolkit was developed to help LBS providers conduct ONAs. What it includes is a description of the ONA process, as well as tools for each of the stages, each of those three stages that I introduced to you. And there's a series of tools for each of the stages. The way it's designed is it reflects the flexibility that is inherent in conducting ONAs. So the providers who are using that ONA toolkit are encouraged to choose from, adapt, from those tools, use them however works given the employer that they're working with, given the questions that they have. So it's essentially built with flexibility in mind. And I'll show you some of the tools to give you a sense of what I mean. I know you can't read these, but you don't need to read them. So one of the tools that I'm showing you here, tool number 2, are sample interview questions. Each of the tools have kind of a similar format. They start with a description of what the tool is and how it's intended to be used. So the sample interview questions are exactly that. They're sample interview questions that LBS providers could use to plan the interviews that they were going to conduct with, employers. So with, the company leadership, with employees. These sample interview questions serve as a starting point. They are not meant to be, used as a script. I'm going to ask all these questions exactly this way, exactly in this order, because of course, the questions that you ask to gather the information that you need for an organizational needs assessment has to do with who it is that you're conducting the ONA with. So the tools in the toolkit take that reality into account. The other samples that we're displaying here is, tool number 4, a sample self-assessment. Again, the same idea. It could be used as is, or it could be used as reference to create a self-assessment that is even more applicable in the employment context that the ONA is taking place. Tool 8 is a page from a sample report. This was included, and a few of the tools are included for reasons like this, so that sometimes it's like, okay, well, you need to write a report at the end of this ONA process. The question of what should the report include? How should it sound? Where do I start? That can be a bit daunting. And so what we did was we made sure to include tools in the toolkit that would answer some of those questions so that you're not starting from a complete blank page. You have an example that you could refer to help you with, with crafting that report. So that's the idea behind the toolkit, a way of describing the ONA, outlining the process, and supplying targeted tools that help LBS providers conducting ONAs kind of, carry out each of the steps in this flexible process. Okay, I know I covered a lot there. Are there any questions at this point? I'm going to take the lack of hands to signal that there aren't. There will be other opportunities to ask questions. So if you're like, wait a second, no, I did have a question, fear not, you will have an opportunity to ask it. Okay. Now I get to pass it over to Christina, who is currently on a beach, as you can see. Or, we're all with you there, it's
Good.
cold right now, but I'm pretending it's not freezing outside.
I am there under the palm tree. You cannot see me, but I'm there. Okay.
You're right. So I'm passing it over to Christina as the representative from Dixon Hall to share her experiences with conducting the ONA last year. In particular, she'll be talking about, why Dixon Hall decided to participate, how Dixon Hall ended up using the toolkit, as well as whether Dixon Hall would consider doing another ONA.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for allowing me to share just in a couple of minutes to share the very interesting experience we had introducing and implementing this ONA, okay? And I need to apologize. I hope I will be good till the end of my presentation. As I said at the beginning, something is wrong with the internet under the palm tree today. So I'll try to be as short as possible. Okay, so my name is Cristina Corrano. I work with Dixon Hall. Give me a second, please. Hi there. Okay, so I will start with answering the very last question. Yes, we'll be very much interested in conducting another or others ONAs. Okay, I truly believe that based on the information MTML and you ladies offered us, the toolkit, and all the other materials coupled with our experience implementing this this last year, I think this is an extremely valuable tool and project for employers and employment/LBS services. And I will explain why. Okay, so I will start with the fun part. We had a blast working together and learning together with our designated employer. Okay, and we discovered so many things. We discovered why ONA will be good for them. We discover what we didn't do right, why we didn't in such a short time, but it was an extremely helpful experience and eye-opener for me. Okay, so we choose to apply ONA on one of our employer partners. Okay, so that was a good decision considering the very short time we had to do this. So an employer who's already with us, we did a lot of partnering, we did some JMPIs with them, so we knew each other. Okay, However, when we started to introduce ONA, okay, based on the information that the package I had, everything was great. Pink was pink until we realized, this is my sincere opinion. That stage needed not just some info sessions, but an education session for the employer, okay? Because we needed to align our expectation, our understanding about what an ONA is and their expectation, their understanding, okay? And just to let you know, we worked with a very small and very ambitious startup, non-for-profit arts company. We worked almost every single day. We were in touch for 2.5 months with their CEO, their board of directors, and their employees. Okay, that's the good part. Okay, so we didn't need to spend a lot of time going up on the chain. Okay, however, again, so lack of clear understanding what ONA is. We tried to do our best. We needed more time to do that. Okay, that's a lesson learned for me. Secondly, we adapted the ONA toolkits. So thank you very much. That was extremely helpful as a startup point for us, extremely helpful. Okay, we implemented that, but I made a mistake. I made a mistake when I choose that employer. That's a small employer, six employees. Okay, so I didn't have a lot of room to decide which of those employees should be invited for to participate. Okay, because the CEO asked me to choose, so I was knowledgeable about their names, their job description, their roles. I had to choose. That was not a good idea. Okay, so everything has to be properly planned. This is what I try to say. Okay, so in my opinion, ONA is an extremely important tool, a very helpful tool, but deeper planning needs to happen, and clearly not for 3-5 months plus. I think it was not such a great idea, but I do understand the funding time. So not such a good idea trying to implement an ONA over the holidays, the winter holidays. Okay, that was another hurdle we had. Okay, I will not get into the reports and results because, but if anyone is interested, please get back to Karen and Marisa. They really assisted us. So I would say our experience was a successful one. Can be replicated, yes, and I would like to participate. I think we would like to participate as a team. Can be improved totally. Okay, so that's my 2 cents. Anybody,
great,
if you have questions, please put them in the chat, or I'm open, Christina Coderno at dixonhall.org. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Christina. Christina, if you want to put your email in the chat, maybe that would be a good way for people to connect with you directly if they want to. And obviously they can get in touch with Ambreen at MTML as well. Thanks, that's great. It's always good to hear from people who did it. And Christina, as we expected, you were able to tell us the good, the bad, and the ugly, because, there were very real constraints, which we knew kind of all of us going in. Not the least of which were the crazy timelines. But the fact that you were able to fully execute, the ONA, and as you say, kind of learn from the experience and then bring it forward into future endeavors. That didn't scare you off doing it in the future. And I know that over a couple of conversations that we had, you saw real advantages, even just making those connections between LBS and employers and seeing how that could even improve programming,
Absolutely.
LBS programming, because you know, it's kind of a vehicle, a way to yeah, to see how people really use their skills, right? Once they're outside
Absolutely.
of a literacy program. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks. All right, so we're gonna move on. We'll hear from one more person who carried out an ONA in a couple of minutes. So here's what we found. And this was something that we kind of recognized going in. So the way that the ministry funding worked was that first year was about conducting organizational needs assessments. Second year would be about conducting or trying out workplace literacy, which is kind of a weird way to separate things, because ONAs are not an end in themselves. They are always a means to an end. And so one of the things we found was in trying to get the word out there about being able to conduct organizational needs assessments, in some ways it divorced ONAs from what they really are supposed to be about, which is a means to being able to address training needs, right? Actually address those needs, either through workplace literacy or through referrals to LBS programs or other programming. So that was certainly something that we were reminded of. We recognize that ONAs are best approached flexibly. The way that the three were conducted under this pilot, very different from each other as they needed to be. Obviously, they had to take into account these very constrained timelines. But we again sort of learned how necessary it is to take your lead from the employer when you're planning an ONA. We also learned that employers really actually enjoyed the process. They found the process relevant to their workplaces and to their workers. It gave their companies an opportunity to share business goals or training needs, and they identified that it helped them understand which skill gaps could be addressed through training. So that was a good, a good outcome. One of the other things that we could see from the pilot was that more clarity and accompanied by sort of transparent and sustainable funding are necessary if we're going to start talking about workplace service delivery. And so that was one of the recommendations that MTML made in its report back to the ministry. This idea, okay, it's great if we're offering organizational needs assessments, but if those are going to be followed by workplace service delivery and there's going to be potentially funding associated with that, we need to know that in advance so we can communicate that during that organizational needs assessment process, or even just during outreach when we're talking to employers about what are, what services we are able to offer as LBS providers. So a multi-year funding model would, allow LBS providers to establish some realistic outreach plans and articulate what they can offer. And the other thing that was in the report from the, MTML to the ministry was consideration of what the real resource demands are of offering workplace service delivery. It tends to be time intensive to plan training. It's time intensive to do ONAs, or can be. But it's certainly also time intensive to plan appropriate training and deliver it. And it's not the same as delivering training in, in a standalone kind of organization like an LBS program. Okay. We could also see, and I think that Christina alluded to this, there are challenges and opportunities for LBS providers. Biggest challenge was convincing employers to participate in an ONA. And the best prospects came from organizations that had connections with employers, may have been personal connections that individual staff members had, or just connections established over the years through the organization. It also came on the employer side. It came from employers who have a training culture. That's not surprising, right? Organizations that you could reach out to, employers you could reach out to, and are intrigued, interested in this notion of identifying training needs. The opportunities we saw were that outreach to employers can result in referrals to LBS providers, even if an ONA isn't completed. MTML themselves had this experience of talking to a number of different employers who had no idea LBS programs existed and were very keen to talk about those opportunities for skills upgrading with their employees. We also saw that workplace needs enable LBS providers to develop and deliver relevant learning content, because making those connections with employers, understanding what skills people need on the job, gives insight into LBS so that we can prepare people better for, you know, those ultimate goals of getting jobs, and also understand better those LBS learners who aren't successful at work, who may keep coming back to LBS programs. We can start to help them see, you know, and help them develop some of those skills to make them less vulnerable in those occupations. Finally, we could see that workplace service delivery is a natural extension of working with employment-bound learners. So it offers opportunities to work with employers and to prepare them, to prepare those employers to receive workers. Okay. And lastly, we found that MTML does in fact have a role in helping to build capacity to conduct ONAs in some of the same ways that we tried during the pilot, and some additional ways that we were able to identify through the experience in the pilot. And we could see that both tools like the ONA toolkit and some other tools, and support, ongoing support, are necessary to ensure that the ONAs kind of go as smoothly as they can. And of course, these findings directly informed MTML's plans for the current fiscal year's activities. So now I'd like to pass it over to Shaheen. Oh, I see Jane Tour has a question. I see a hand up.
Just because I wanted to say hi to you guys, but
hi, Jane.
But really, I was wondering, you guys said that it was, you know, convincing employers of the ONA. Did you run into any problems about that some just turned you down, or that you went in the door and they said, oh yeah, we're in, and then they'll say like, no, we're out? Because we ran into it was like people like dropping us in the middle of the beginning of it all.
Oh yeah. You know, we were really kind of, as I'm sure you were at Project Read, in a rush to the finish line almost, right? There were, I'm just going to speak on behalf of all three organizations because I know this, and just in the interest of keeping the presentation on course. Yes, the short answer is yes. All, you know, as I recall, all the organizations had some sort of start, stop, to the point where it looked really promising in some cases, and then, you know, the employer or the contact had to back off. So yes, and I think that was something that we really, you know, took to heart, is that this notion of employer outreach and what it really means to secure an employer, that's a longer term effort sometimes, but that's exactly where MTML wants to spend some of its time and effort, so that it's less onerous for the LBS provider who agrees to do an ONA. Okay.
I'm just going to jump in here because we actually have two guests from PTP, which is great. So Anne-Marie Williams will start off the presentation and then pass it over to Shahina. It's a bit of a tag team, which is
all
wonderful.
Right.
Hi.
Great.
Hi, everyone.
Your 5 minutes.
Thanks very much.
Yes.
Okay. Hello. I'm Anne-Marie Williams, and Shahina, my colleague, asked that we kind of work together, and I get just like 30 seconds or so to say why we wanted to be part of this. It's very unusual, I think, to have had an opportunity like this for an LBS program. So definitely we wanted to be involved, and we were also anticipating the call that would come in phase 2. So at PTP, we have LBS and we have ES. Nonetheless, and although we've worked for a long time within the context of literacy as a path to employment, in our daily lives, ES and LBS tend to be a bit separate. So this was a chance to get into, and it's not that ES does ONAs, but somehow this gave us a chance to get inside a workplace and to have a different perspective. One of the things that we found historically is that for our LBS learners, quite frequently, their, I'm going to say understanding maybe or attachment to the world of work is quite weak. And although we as practitioners are in the world of work, it's a kind of, it's a very specialized kind of work that we're engaged in. So this is a real chance to learn, and it's to build capacity. Our funder is also indicating that there is going to be some kind of rethinking or of LBS objectives. There's likely to be greater attachment to workforce development, and we know that employment services is being transformed. For all those reasons, it was key for us to be involved. So Shahina.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. As Anne-Marie said, I'm Shahina and I work at PTP, and I conducted an ONA with a large bakery, a manufacturer of baked goods based in Scarborough, and they have 74 plus employees. I just want to say first, it was a real joy working with Karen and Marissa, and I really want to thank you for all the support and encouragement, as well as with MTML. I really feel that, I was able to achieve the ONA really because of the support and the encouragement and the guidance that you both provided, and I really appreciate that. In December last year, as you mentioned, we had the orientation session. It was a really great opportunity to learn about what an ONA is, how do we conduct one, and the process that's involved. Following that session, we signed up as a project partner, and that sort of gave us the opportunity to attend an orientation session, conduct some outreach, identify employers, attend a really great training session, actually conduct the ONA, and just keeping both Marissa and Karen in the loop. The previous question was about employers, and I had my fair share of employers that were close to the finishing line. Some didn't respond back to me, some had to get a formal letter, but in all of that, I think there was this positivity and hope, saying that no, we will be able to find another employer. So that for me was really great, having somebody there that I could just sort of ask questions to. So that again is Karen and Marissa. The training session was really great. We received the toolkit, and as you mentioned, it is a really great starting point. I think that when I started the interview process with the director, the HR person, and I didn't really refer back to those questions. Those questions gave me a great starting point, but then it just evolved gradually and organically. But the ONA toolkit, full of tools that we can use. Really, it was about which questions we could, the sample questions to ask, sample self-assessment tools to gather information, and the last piece, how to write the report. So again, I really love that toolkit, and I'm sure that for me was really a great help for me to go forward. I also want to, besides Karen and Marissa, I also want to sort of, really thank the employers, because they were really open, they were really willing. They did not know what they did not know, except that they knew they had a few skills gaps. So they couldn't word it properly, they couldn't identify what kind of skills gaps, where it was approaching. And so for me, I had to make sense of all of this, but they were very supportive and helped me. So I think that is also important, that you get a good employer partner, but then it doesn't have to be a good one. I think the intention is also pretty important. I remember one employer partner needed us to do a formal letter because it was a franchisee, and we very quickly got that going. I mean, there was no delay. There was a sense of like, we're all working in it together. The feedback that I received was amazing. And that feedback really gave me that feeling that we're walking the process with you. I also want to mention PTP, the executive director, Anne-Marie, and our job developer. We were all working in this together. And I think it's important that you have that support back at your work site, because we're working together into something pretty new, and it required some collaboration. But yeah, that's really what helped us to get, and then also the JD, the job developer, it was really her employer partners, strong leads that she had made. And I'll pass it back to Anne-Marie for the third question.
Oh, you're muted, Anne-Marie.
Sorry, I think Shahina's answered that,
Oh.
based on the enthusiasm for her response. Of course we would.
Yeah, I think, yeah, and if I can just sort of say, number one, that it builds our knowledge in this area. And that for me was an amazing learning point, which I've taken back to the agency. And now we have some capacity. So capacity in our agency and our staff. And then also, it's another way of engaging with our employers. We want to move from transactional into more stakeholder, relationships. This provides us with that opportunity. And then I think, and Maria, I hope I'm not stepping on the shows. I know that we were gonna, but I think it's also learning what's happening in the industry to inform our programming back on site.
So if I would add one point to that, Shahina, I think we have such confidence in our commitment to a holistic notion of literacy that we don't feel that by focusing in this particular way on workforce that we'll somehow lose our identity or our commitment to learners' integrity and wholeness of experience.
Thanks. That's great. Thank you so much. And you can hear the enthusiasm in Shahina's voice. It was a pleasure working with both Shahina and Christina. And I want to echo a couple of things. One is that it was a great learning opportunity for all of us. And so being able to work together, if any other LBS providers are thinking about doing it, it was such an amazing opportunity to learn. And, I've done a number of ONAs in my life, and every single time it is slightly different. And, it's very interesting for that reason, because you're working with different employers, different questions, different kinds of employees and needs and so on. So that kind of learning stance and enthusiasm for learning, I think, is something that really stands you in good stead if you're interested in taking something like this on. There's no one right way of doing it, right? It's all about, I think, as Shahina said, good intention, and you go into a partnership with an employer with that good intention as a problem-solving mode and a collaborative kind of approach, and they meet you halfway.
Absolutely.
Okay.
There are two questions in the chat. Sorry. Do you want?
Yeah.
So one is by Manaz. Question about pilot result. Did the employer find better job maintenance with support given? It may be post-pilot follow-up question.
Yeah. We didn't gather that information. These owners, because of the timelines, the reports just went in at the, kind of towards the end. And we asked questions about the recommendations that came from we asked employers about the recommendations. We don't know the extent to which, anything it was put in place. Probably wasn't, because, it's only May now. So we don't know that, but that's something we can look at more this year.
Yeah.
There's another question.
I'm sorry, if I can add, Karen,
Yeah.
with our employer, Dixon Hall employer, extremely interesting. So our entire collaboration with them made them think and made us think about next steps. Okay. So after we shared the results, the analysis and the results with them, they said, we need to plan some work internally. Okay. So I think, to me, that was the best result of our collaboration with them. They didn't say, okay, whatever, thank you and goodbye. Okay. So we stay in touch with that employer, and they would be really interested in even getting some additional training related to any organizational needs assessment. So that's my.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Shahina, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I think very similar. The director that I met, and I gave the overview of the report, and again, she was scribbling down. She was saying, well, I'm going to go back to the the operations manager. We're going to make these changes. We're willing to try this. We're willing to try that. And then I also went to both the store managers just to keep that loop, that I haven't just come and I've left. I am back again just to give you a little bit of feedback of what happened. Both of them are very excited, very motivated. They felt like, their bosses were interested in helping them and wanting to help them. So I think that, we may not have given them a plan of execution, but I think it definitely created that feeling that we are going to use this report and make some important changes. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you.
Sorry, Karen, there's another question in the chat. What are the benefits of doing ONA for an employer?
I'm thinking that some of what Christina and Shahina just pointed to are some of the benefits, right? To be able to identify training needs that can do things like reduce turnover, improve chances that they can hire from or promote from within, make sure that people are safe and as effective as they can be on the job. That all comes from well-trained employees who feel valued, and training, it can often be a way to acknowledge the people that you have on site and say you're worth investing in. And so trying to help employers see that, or, you know, in the cases of, I think both the employers that Shahina and Christina are working with, they see that benefit themselves.
Yeah, Karen, if I could just say, you know, there's those communication pieces, collaboration pieces, adaptability pieces, and we think we understand all of those. Those are big pieces. And you know, you may be the executive director, or you may be the, you know, the managing partner, whatever your position is. But when it comes down to operational, those pieces need to be, you know, really to be supported. And not many people that are coming into the job have all of those all in one package. And so I think that when I did the report, and then we were mentioning about, then they had this aha moment, that's probably why we're not that great with our customer service. This is why my complaints is really good. You know, and so I think that you have to speak with that skills for success thinking, but also look at where they're at and what they want to achieve, and what is stopping them from achieving what their business goal is. So I think the benefit really is that there's that investment of their training, helping them, their workers, in helping them with their skill needs. And that really gives them workers who are engaged and motivated.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Thanks. Great.
I think, you know, just to pick up on something Shahina just said, really, it's a means to actually, ONAs are means to help, is one step in a process. So the ONA, and then, you know, even the ONA on its own, and ideally with some kind of workplace literacy intervention that follows, it's a way for employers to actually achieve their business goals. It will help the employer achieve their business goals. You know, an employer, that's what the employer is interested in. Of course, that makes sense. They have business goals, you know, workplace literacy, learning about, you know, skills needs. Those are all tools to help them get there. So I think that's one of the things, you know, that we're thinking about as we develop, you know, outreach tools to try to reach employers, is to make sure that we're talking to employers in the language that they understand, so that they can see that what we're doing can actually help them on the path, on their path, right? And I think, you know, talking to Shahina and to Christina has, you know, made that clear for us as well.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll just quickly go through the plan that MTML has based on the experience and working with the pilots. So we want to address the challenges that arose in the pilots. We're developing outreach tools to help identify employers, as Marisa just talked about. MTML will be actually conducting outreach using those tools, a variety of different tools, to try to get some interest from employers. We'll be looking at the ONA toolkit. Any emerging needs that arise, we can add to that toolkit, supplement it. And we're going to be offering a series of training opportunities, as well as ongoing support, as we offered last year, for anyone who is interested in conducting an ONA. So, you know, one of the things to think about is, if you are an LBS program in the MTML region and you're interested in conducting an ONA, what MTML can do is help you sort of scope out some ONA activities so that they're manageable. And what it allows you to do is apply the learning from that ONA to your organization's current or future programming. So as you heard from both Shahina and Christina, there's some real benefits there in the activity of the ONA itself, not to mention what it can lead to. And Breen, you were just going to mention about the opportunity. The funding is still available should an LBS
the
program.
Skills for Success funding for service providers is open, and I think the last date to apply is May 31st. So those of you who may be interested, again, we're here to support, and throughout the year, MTML, I mean, Karen and Marissa are doing a great job. I know their experience and knowledge. We're here to support and train you, so just prepare yourself for what may come in the future. So this is such a good opportunity, even just to develop and learn. Oh, yeah.
Okay. So there will be 3 training sessions. The first one is already scheduled. That will be an introduction to the ONA process and toolkit. So that's a sort of a preliminary one. And it's open to all LBS programs, so you don't have to have necessarily committed to do an ONA in order to attend that. And then sessions 2 and sessions 3 haven't been scheduled yet because we're going to wait and see who we're working with, and we're going to schedule them according to their needs and their schedules. The first, that second session, session 2, will focus on data collection, and the third session will focus on analysis and reporting. So more in-depth training than we were able to offer in the last very compressed pilot timelines. But we really will take our cue from the programs and the providers who come on board because yeah, we can do that, right? We can customize to your needs. So that's the training. And anything else to say, Marissa?
Can I just add one thing, Karen?
Yeah.
So I know that some organizations, due to their organization capacity, may not take up the workplace initiative, but that's just one way. The other way is because MTML has taken up this initiative, you can reach out to us that under your umbrella, can we conduct ONAs? That is also another possibility. So 2 ways that you can participate in this initiative just to learn. And we're not telling you just, do apply for it, but it's up, again, you have to see your needs. But just to learn, we are providing at our end an opportunity for training.
Right. So just to clarify, an organization like, as I understand it, PTP has is planning to do a workplace literacy pilot, and then we'll do an ONA as part of that potentially. But you don't have to apply. An LBS program does not have to apply for a workplace service pilot. I always get the words wrong, but for that pilot, in order to conduct an ONA. If you want to just focus on an ONA, you can do that under the umbrella of MTML, who does have funding to offer several ONAs under them. So 2 ways you can get involved. Okay. So we're going to be doing outreach, focus sort of on outreach to generate interest amongst employers over the next, 5-6 months. The training session, as we said, that first training session will happen in June. We hope to be able to identify LBS providers who are interested in conducting an ONA in June and July, and then we'll schedule subsequent training based on those folks who come on board. And then the idea is once those ONAs start, we have longer than the 5 months, but we'll be able to support them, offer ongoing support for them right through until the end of the pilot, which is next March. So 3 different opportunities. If you want to explore how an ONA can support a workplace literacy pilot that you are going to be, that you either have applied for or plan to apply for funding for, get in touch with MTML to talk about that. You can sign up for the training session that's happening in June to learn more about the ONA process and the toolkit. And if you're interested, as we said, in discussing just conducting an ONA, even if you're not doing a workplace delivery pilot, but you're interested in potentially doing an ONA, you can get in touch with MTML and talk about what that could look like for your organization. And that's it. Boy, we're coming in just under the deadline here. We have a quick Zoom poll that I'd like to make sure we have time to do. Does anybody have any last minute questions before we do that? And obviously this doesn't have to stop here. I know Ambreen is always willing to, would love to hear from you. And so if you do have questions that aren't answered today, please do get in touch. How do you sign up for session 1, Ambreen?
Let me just check our website. I know I put up all the flyers there. Give me 1 second. Okay, I'll put up a new flyer and I'll distribute it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's just a
That's
general.
great. So
And there's
here's
also
the-
a question about funding eligibility criteria while you answer your poll. Ambreen, can you direct Rahul to where?
Yeah, I
the
messaged him separately. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So if
Susan, can
would
you
mind-
activate the poll? Sorry. I don't have
Is it
access.
activated?
I'm just asking Susan to do it because
I've seen it
I have
activated.
it.
I can see it. I can see
Okay.
the poll.
People are
I
answering.
just completed it.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. So somebody asked, was this considered to session 1? No, this is called our information session. Some might call it session
Training.
1.
Training session 1 will be in June. Yes.
So while you're answering the poll, thank you very much for your interest, for coming out, for asking good questions. And we hope that we've piqued your interest and that you're interested in at least having a think about whether to get involved in a workplace literacy pilot or an ONA. And I'm going to turn it over to Ambreen to close out.
no, thank you so much. Again, I know from our experience in last year, at least for me, I can say I was scared when I heard about workplace literacy. But thank you to all the people who contribute, even the people. I mean, I especially want to also thank Jane for all those interviews, her help. Karen and Marissa did a great job, but to all the experienced people who helped us figure things out. And we hope that MTML can play its part and help support all LBS programs in conducting ONAs. Sarah Hen, no, so Skills for Success funding is ending March 31st, 2024. We are not sure about what the ministry plans for beyond that.
Okay. So I think once you've done your poll, we
Thanks,
can wrap up.
Yes, thank you, Mira.
Kudos to Marissa and Karen.
Thanks. Okay.
Thank you
everyone.
so much. And we hope to see you on June 14th.
Definitely. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye, thank you. That was good. That was great. I thought that motivated me to do another ONA.
Oh, did it? Oh, good.
No, and Christina and PTP were great. It helps, right? To listen to those real stories.
Yes.
It helps.
Totally.
Yes. Yeah.
Totally.
No, definitely. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and I'm actually excited about the June 14th session because I think it'll be great to kind of go through everything with everyone. And I also feel like I think the timing is good. People don't have to make a decision right now about whether they're going to do an ONA. Gives them some time to think about it. So, the results, the poll results.
Oh, I don't know where did I log in from? I can't see anything. Susan, can you stop the recording?